anyhow, we're going to dive into this topic of retirement planning. And some of you in here, this might come much more natural than others. Some people are just have a bent to be able to understand this. Maybe you've gone through some education in this area, and it's easier for you to understand terminology. And then there's the other end of the spectrum where retirement planning just blows your mind anytime you think about it. It's like, and you just think, I'll deal with that later, and put it off. And so there's kind of two ends of the spectrum. So I'm going to try to be as practical and as easy to understand as I can possibly be. But also, I'm going to talk about some things that may be a little more advanced. And let me just start off by saying that I do have to say this. Anything you hear in here is educational only. Please don't take investment advice from me. I'm not here to provide investment advice, and you should seek your own financial advisor if you're planning on making any financial decisions with investing or anything like that. So please do understand this is educational only. That's my legal disclaimer, so we can dive in. So you have a retirement planning worksheet. This is Charles Schwab. It's a free document. You can find it online if you want to pull that off. It's just a PDF off their website. And I thought it was pretty helpful in a simple way to walk through what you actually need. We're going to answer a couple questions today. We're going to answer, how much do you need for retirement? We're going to walk through a couple examples. And then we're going to talk about how do you get there? So number one, how much do you need? Number two, how do you get there? I'm going to give you a couple of really helpful resources at the very end. So if you want some resources and you're going to go through this exercise on your own, these resources are what I used to come up with the examples today. So they should be pretty helpful. So we talked about the 7 baby steps. Okay, we covered the 7 baby steps, which were number one, get $1,000 in the bank, then get the debt snowball taken care of, take care of all of that debt. Remember the idea of net worth? Remember that? If you're putting money into your retirement account, but you're going deeper in debt, it doesn't really help you. Does that make sense? So you want to take care of the debt before you're contributing to your retirement account. If you get those two mixed up, it's going to throw everything off. And then when you get to retirement, you're going to find out, I need to use my retirement money to pay debts off. Okay, so you're going to make sure that you're using your retirement for retirement and that you're taking care of debt. It's step 2. Do that initially. And if you need to start somewhere, start there. Start paying down those debts. And we talked about in a previous session, paying off the highest interest rate versus actually using the debt snowball method. Use what works best for you. I personally would go after the highest interest rate if it were me. Then after that, you're getting your emergency fund into place. It's amazing when you get that emergency fund, just that breath of fresh air, like, hey, hon, let's go out to Applebee's tonight. Yeah, it doesn't matter. We can spend a couple of extra bucks, no big deal. It's really nice when you don't have to sweat about every penny. Get that emergency fund saved up and do yourself a favor. You will be able to take a breath of fresh air once you get, that might be $10,000, $15,000, $20,000. And that sounds like a big chunk of change, but really need to be working towards that. And park it in a money market account that pays you a little bit of interest, but don't put it in the stock market or anything like that. A money market account will give you a guaranteed rate. Right now, you can get between 1 to 1.5% on that. It's not gonna change your life, but it's something. Okay. And then after that, what we're really going to dive into today is this idea of retirement. Where do you do? How do you get there? The baby step has 15%. Now that's a really high percentage. If you have to calculate 15% of your income, that's a really high percentage. Some of you may need to do that. Some of you may not necessarily need to do that. We're going to drill down a little bit deeper into that. That's a blanket principle that should get you there wherever you are, but we're going to drill down deeper. You may not necessarily need to be at 15%, but if you are, that's gonna be a big deal. Then there's college funding, there's paying off the house, and building wealth and giving. We're going to talk about house buying in a future session. And remember, we talked about wealth gained hastily will dwindle, but whoever gathers little by little will increase it. And we're going to talk about gathering little by little today. And there's a tendency, there's this possibility that as you're talking about finances and actually achieving goals, that you start to get obsessed with it. And that's a problem. You don't want to get to the place where like your whole world is revolving around your little nest egg and you're thinking the whole world is okay because you're meeting your financial goals. That's what we would call an idol. You're bowing down and worshiping the idol of your finances. And that becomes a problem. That starts to conflict with your ability to obey Christ in various ways. And we know the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. So we want to protect against loving money. And Will Rogers said this in the 1930s. He's a humorist. He says, "I am more concerned with the return of my money than the return on my money." And so this, I think, the Great Recession is in our minds. There's also this tendency where you can get to a place where you're actually petrified by the idea of investing and retirement. And that, that can hold you back, and that can actually become a problem as well. If you're just to the point where you cannot invest anything. You want to be wise about it, and you want to do what's right for you, but you don't want to be the person who gets to that and you just say, you know what, I'm going to hide it all under the mattress or whatever. Because as you'll see in a minute, we're going to work through a situation where you can see how that actually does hurt you significantly if that's your approach. So there's two ends of the spectrum. There's I want to get rich quick, and then there's I don't want to invest anything at all. And you want to kind of be somewhere in the middle. So I'm going to start with a story, okay? I'm going to start with my personal get-rich-quick scheme. Are you ready for this? I had one once. And I've told some of you in the past that I grew up, I did not come from a family with means. It just wasn't there for us. We struggled. That's the reality of it. We always struggled. And I grew up in that environment. It was fine. The Lord provided for us and got us through it, but it was a struggle. I got to college, and I learned how to live on a budget. I learned how to crunch the numbers. That was a way of life for us. And when I got to college, I wanted to choose a college I could actually afford, which meant I had to pay for it as I was going along. And that's what I did. I found a school that I could pay for, found some scholarships, worked the whole time, and I was able to come up with a plan where I could pay for college as I was going through. The problem with that is I never had money ever of any kind. I couldn't rub two nickels together. And I wanted to have a little bit. I was thinking about getting married. I need a little money for that. I was thinking about getting my future started. I also wanted to eat a cheeseburger every once in a while. So I needed a little money. And my get-rich-quick scheme was I had a business education, and I was learning about the stock market. And in school, I learned how to trade stocks. And I thought, hey, I think I can do this. I just need money. I have no money. I can't trade stocks if I don't have money. I need money. I need capital. So I researched and found a student loan that basically I would have a 0% interest rate for my school. And while I was in school, after I graduated, it would kick in. They would give me up to $10,000 if I was approved for it. And I thought, oh, yeah, that ought to do it, $10,000. I'll take $10,000. So I went through the application process and bam, got it. So they basically wrote me a check, and I could have gone on vacation with it if I wanted to. And I thought, I want to be careful with this. I want to be okay. I'm going to try to, I'm going to get rich quick, but I'm going to be careful at the same time. Those two ideas don't really go together. And then I learned about this idea of trading on margin. Have you ever heard of trading on margin? Anybody? Trading on margin, you can forget this whole idea after I tell you about it. Just don't even think about it ever again. Trading on margin is the idea where the bank will double the money you have in your account to help you buy stocks. Why would anyone ever want to do that? So you could double your returns. If you have more money, you can invest more, you can make more. The flip side of that is you double your losses, right? You double your losses. So I went through this whole idea that in the stock market and investing, I could get rich quick. And I remember my very first stock trade, I made $20. It was over the course of about 15 minutes. I blocked out my professor. I was sitting in class, and I was watching that ticker, and I was freaking out. And I sold it, and I made $20. And I thought, hey, I can do this. I can do this. And that led me to engage in extremely, extremely unwise and risky behavior. I can tell you the rest of the story later, one-on-one. At that point, I actually took $20,000, none of which was mine, and was trading with it in the markets. And, it was really unwise. And so I want to caution you, as we begin talking about investing for retirement, you want to be wise with the money that the Lord has entrusted with you. This is not about trying to get rich quick. This is about being wise with our money so that we can provide, we can make a plan for the future, and we can have a means so that we can further obey Christ in our lives. And that's what this is all about, okay? So I've got a retirement scenario, and I just want to work through really quickly a couple of things just as an example for you all to think about. I've got 3 scenarios. In each scenario, these people that we're going to talk about, we've got Fearful Frank. We've got 3 scenarios. Each of these 3 scenarios, the person works for their entire career, 25 to 65 is what I've had in this example. They save about $100 every month. So all 3 of them save $48,000 for their retirement throughout their career, okay? And we're going to see what they do with it and what happens in the end. So Fearful Frank is afraid of the stock market, and he goes with the money market account with all of his money. He doesn't invest anything ever. He saves $100 a month, but he's really good at saving. He saves $100 a month and does that every month for 40 years, okay? And that is going to give him a total, if you crunch the numbers and calculate it, can you all see that? That gives him a total of about $66,000, okay? Well, good job, Fearful Frank. You know, you saved up some. You were able to earn a little bit of interest. How far will that amount of money go if you retire at 65? If you kick the can at 70, you might be okay, but it's not gonna get you. You know, it's really not gonna be a great plan. It's not gonna be a great plan. And so we have another person here. We've got debt-laden Deb. I know I was really getting creative with this exercise here. So debt-laden Deb is unable to save because she has so much debt. She's unable to save for retirement until she's 35. So she delays her savings until she's 35. However, she still contributes the same amount of money over the course of her career. She still contributes $48,000, and she puts it in the stock market at 7%, okay? So she comes up with a grand total over the course of her career of $161,712, assuming that 7%, which is an average with the markets. You could, reasonably, you could attain that, actually. 7%. Now, that's a big difference, right? That's almost $100,000 difference. Again, we don't know. We haven't answered the question, how much do you need? So is that amount of money going to get her through her retirement? I don't know. We still have some things to talk about. We still have some things to figure out. So then we have Savvy Sandy. Savvy Sandy's smart. She knows what she's doing. She's saving. She's doing the right thing. So she saves $100 a month, and she does it for her whole career, and she starts at 25 and invests it in the stock market and yields 7%. And her total turns out to $256,000. Each of these 3 people saved the same amount of money over their career, okay? But there's a big difference between $256,000 and $66,000. There's a big difference. The difference there is assuming a little bit of risk and wisely investing in the stock market. I've picked out 7% because that is attainable. They say 4 to 6 is conservative. If you choose some conservative investments, you can get 4 to 6%. 7 to 10 is kind of in the average range, average to good. And then above 10%, that's kind of taken on quite a bit of risk. So I've picked 7%, kind of in the middle there. There is a difference of about $200,000 in the retirement portfolio of Savvy Sandy and Fearful Frank. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. There are 2 factors in here that significantly impact what's going to happen, okay? And these are 2 factors. As you're working through your own retirement planning, these 2 factors are what you're going to have to figure out. And the 2 factors that impact this number the most are time. How much time do you have before you retire? And rate. Where are you going to put that money, and what is it going to yield? You need to be thinking about time. When are you going to retire? How much time do you have? Do you have 10 years or do you have 35 years? I estimate if I retire at the normal age, I have got about a 35-year window to save for retirement as we speak. Okay, so I've got 35 years. Some of you may have more, you may have less. So you need to figure out where you are and what you're going to do. So we're going to answer the next question. All of this standing true. I've got one more example here. I forgot. If you were to take the average new car payment, Dave Ramsey does this, and I think it's brilliant. If you were to take the average car payment, new car payment, which is $500, if you buy a new car and you had a $500 payment, instead of doing that, you put it in your retirement portfolio and you average the same return, did that for 40 years, you end up with $1.2 million. So that's that for what it is. That's a big deal. Okay, so the idea is, I guess, you really got to enjoy that new car. because it's going to cost you big time. It's going to cost you big time. So if you're taking notes and you really want to work through this on your own, write these steps down. These are going to be the steps you're actually going to work through to plan your own retirement. Number one, you're going to estimate your budgetary needs. You need to figure out every year, what is your budget going to be, your estimated budget going to be. We're going to work through an example so you can see how we do that. You need to figure out life expectancy. So take your best guess at your time of death is what we're going to do there. Gets very morbid and sad. And then you're going to figure out the year or how old you will be, Lord willing, when you will retire. And there's some considerations there for those of us who are younger. We're going to have to take a little bit of a bigger curveball with Social Security. And we're going to talk a little bit about that at the very end. So the next thing you're going to do is you're going to calculate your retirement income sources. Are you participating in a pension plan? That's great. If so, that'll be extra income in your retirement. All of us, if we've been working and paying Social Security taxes, we have a government-backed retirement system already. It's a system that's somewhat in jeopardy, okay, at this point. We're going to talk about that. But you can go, and I recommend that you go on ssa.gov, go to the calculator, the quick calculator, and it will tell you based on your earnings history, your actual earnings history. You can just put in your personal information. It will tell you how much you've made in your life. It will estimate how much until your retirement, and then it will tell you what your estimated benefit will be. Doesn't take long. It takes about 5 minutes. So just go to that URL, Google search it, find it, and do it. You'll get a real quick picture of what Social Security will pay you, and we're going to work through that as well. And so now what you've got is you've worked through this. You've come up with your budget. You've come up with how many years you're going to need that. And then you've calculated how much income you have guaranteed to you through pension or Social Security. And then you need to calculate if there's going to be a shortfall there, okay? So make a savings plan to provide for any shortfall between the budget, the money you'll need in retirement, and the income you already have coming in. So that's going to be where you start contributing to your 401k plan at work, or your individual retirement account. That's an individual retirement account. Or you're going to, like I have at the church as a nonprofit, as the IRS calls it, a 403b is what I have here through the church. Same idea as a 401k, same thing. These are tax advantage retirement accounts. So you're going to figure out where you're going to put this extra savings for your retirement years. And you're going to try to bridge the gap between your budget and Social Security or pension and all of that. And then lastly, we're going to talk about consider the savings vehicle. There are different places to put that nest egg. There are different places to put that money. You need to be specific about where it's going. Okay? You guys ready for some examples? We're going to work through this so you can see what it looks like. And then this sheet is going to be your homework. You should take this home this week and do it. It's front and back, okay? So you should have a total of 3 pages, front and back. It's going to walk you through step by step. This worksheet has some assumptions built in. Most experts are going to tell you need to provide for 25 to 30 years life expectancy. So I'm just going to go with what the worksheet has. The worksheet itself says 25 years. So if you retire at 65, it has you kicking the can at 90, okay? So there's some things to think about there. But that's kind of what we're going to go with. That's what generally the experts put your retirement years at 25 to 30 is what you should plan for. And then there's this idea of life expectancy risk if you outlive your money and live to 107. We'll talk about that. So here we go. We're going to calculate what you actually need for retirement. And we're going to talk about a couple of examples. We've got Savvy Sandy and her husband, okay? So Savvy Sandy and her husband are average retirees. According to 2016 data, the average retiree has an annual budget of $44,600. So that may not necessarily be your specific budget, but that's going to help you kind of have a concrete number that maybe you need to save towards. The average retiree in 2016 had a budget of 44.6, okay? Now, they are also very average in that as a couple, they returned the average Social Security, which as of 2016, the average couple took in from retirement, drew $27,120. So there's a problem here. They have too much expense and they have too little income, okay? So they need to come up with a plan to make up for the difference. The difference is approximately $17,000 a year. And we're planning for 25 years of retirement. If you do the math on that, which I have done, that brings you to a need of about $437,000, okay? And that's what they need to supplement their income to get to that 44.6 every year for 25 years. Everyone with me? Okay, good. That wasn't so hard, right? That was pretty easy, actually. Real nice. It's easy. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to figure out how to get that money. How much do they have that money? How much do they have saved now? How much time do they have until they retire? And all of that. So Savvy Sandy and her husband are very young, and so they still have 40 full years. Very nice. When you're young, you have a lot of time to figure this out. So Savvy Sandy and her husband, give me a minute here as I'm pulling it up. There we go. They have to come up with, on average, assuming a 5% rate, which is very attainable, that's a conservative rate, for 40 years, all they need to do is sock away $290 a month in their retirement account every year for 40 years. I found this information out on the Dave Ramsey Retirement Calculator. It's very easy. It takes 20 seconds to calculate what you would need for your own situation. I'll give you that resource. For this situation, to come up with that amount that they need to bridge the gap, $290 a month, assuming a 5% interest rate. Now, if you're sticking your money in a money market account and you're not investing it in the stock market, you're going to have a much higher number that you need to save, okay? So if you're really, really afraid of this idea like, oh no, my money could go down in value, you're going to make it much more difficult on yourself when planning for your retirement. The reality of retirement planning today is this idea of risk and how much or how little do you take. And you do need to talk with, if you're uncomfortable doing this on your own, talk with a financial advisor. They're going to be able to help you pick the right places for your money to go. But for this example here, we've picked the idea that they want to plan conservatively. They've got some Social Security income, and given those variables, they're able to come up with, over the course of their career, 25 to age 65, they're able to come up with $441,402, which is just north of what they need. Make sense? It's pretty good so far. Now that you've got your nest egg, let's assume that you've got entered into that retirement. Now what do you do with it? How do you use it? We're going to talk about that. Don't forget about taxes. Don't forget about taxes. Taxes are a big deal when it comes to planning your retirement, okay? You need to remember that depending on the account you're using, you're going to have to pay taxes now, or you're going to have to pay taxes later. Taxes will come in at some point. You have to consider taxes. So we've still got Savvy Sandy, the example, Savvy Sandy and her husband, in the 401k, which is the account that they used. They used a 401k. They socked away all that money, $290 a month at 5% for 40 years. They socked it away in their 401k. That's what they came up with, was $441. They've got that. Now, in retirement, you want to shift. You don't want to take as much risk because you need your money to live on. So what they're going to do is they're going to shift to much more conservative investments, and over the course of their retirement, they're only going to be earning 2%, okay? And that's going to happen over the course of their whole retirement of 25 years. That's going to produce for them, I'll give you the calculator for this, their online calculators. Only takes about 20 seconds to calculate that number. After taxes in a 15% tax bracket, that's going to give Savvy Sandy and her husband about $1,500, $1,600 in retirement income from their 401k. Is your mind blown yet? Anybody's mind blown? Are you following me? Is this making sense? Is breaking it down step by step so you can figure this out? I walk through these examples for my own situation with Lauren on a regular basis because it changes from time to time. So you should be working through this and thinking through this on your own, on a regular basis. Come back to it as time changes and as your ability to save changes. Hopefully over time your ability to contribute more and your expenses are going to go down. Hopefully you're working towards the idea of having your house paid off by the time you're retired. So let's see what that does for the monthly budget of Savvy Sandy and her husband. That comes up with Savvy Sandy and her husband. They get $2,260 from Social Security. They get $1,587 from their 401k. That gives their total monthly budget from their 401k and Social Security about $3,847 on a monthly basis versus their estimated budget, which was based on the average of $3,717. So they have just a little bit more than they need for 25 years of retirement. Done. Did that take too long? It's not that difficult. You can very easily crunch these numbers on your own. There are a couple things to think about. Life expectancy risk. This is going to take them, if they retire at 65, it's going to take them to 90. Ladies, y'all live longer statistically than men. So maybe there's a possibility that instead of planning for 25 years, you really want to plan for 30 years or 35 just to be safe. And if you're adding 10 years of retirement, that's going to dramatically change the amount that you need to save on a monthly basis, okay? But you walk through the steps the same way. A financial advisor is going to will do this essentially for you. He'll crunch these numbers for you, and then he'll give you advice on what kinds of funds to put your money in. There are traditional retirement accounts, a traditional 401k, a traditional 403b. What does that mean? What is a traditional account? This was the earliest established tax benefit retirement account that Congress set up for us. This is the idea that Congress will give you, the IRS will give you a tax break now if you contribute to your retirement account. Okay, so if you have a traditional, most employer plans are going to automatically set up a traditional account for you. That means if you put $100 a month into that account, it's not going to be taxed today. In other words, it will be taxed one day, but not today is not that day. It's going to be taxed when you pull it out of that account in the future. You're going to have to tell the IRS how much money you're pulling out of your accounts as you're pulling that money out. And then they're going to calculate your tax at that time. So really the trick here is to figure out, is a Roth or a traditional account better? Roth is the flip. A Roth account, you pay the taxes now, and it grows tax-free. And then when you pull it out of your account, you pull it all out. No taxes in retirement. And so there was a study that came out that said a Roth was way better, always use a Roth. And that turns out that study, if you've heard about this, the Roth is way better. That study was a little flawed. And really what happens if you take $100 a month in each scenario, put it in a traditional versus putting it in a Roth, they grow at the same rate, and you're taxed at the same rate now and in retirement. You're going to come out with the exact same dollar figure, okay? So in that scenario, all things being equal, if they grow at the same and your tax rate is the same, it doesn't matter which one you choose. Pick whichever one you want. However, the difference is your tax bracket will change most likely from where you are now and where you are in your retirement years. It could be that right now you're in your 40s or 50s, you're earning the highest level you're going to be earning in your lifetime, and you're in a higher tax bracket than when you move into your retirement years. That means you want a traditional account because you don't want to pay taxes in the higher tax bracket. You want to pay taxes in the lower tax bracket. So what you would do is you'd go with the traditional. Most experts would say for you young people, you're not earning the most. Right now, you're in a low tax bracket. It could be that your taxes will be higher later. And if that's the case for you, pay the taxes now, put it in a Roth account, and let it grow in the Roth account. So really what you have to figure out is what taxes are you paying. Get a tax table out from irs.gov and figure out what taxes you're paying and figure out which one will be best for you. And the other option here is, anybody here an employee of the state? Any state employees? We've got a couple of state employees. You've got retirement options through the state. Typically, these are pretty nice. Through state and federal governments, you usually have pretty good options, better options than those of us who work for smaller organizations or private organizations. You've got better options. And one to consider is an annuity. Annuity typically has higher costs with it. But the nice thing about an annuity is that it is a guaranteed payment for life. And this protects against the concept that you could live until you're 107, okay? So if you have an average life expectancy, you're probably going to get less from your retirement. But if you do tend to live really long, if that's something in your family history or whatever, then an annuity might be a good option. It kind of takes that idea off. You don't have to sweat about running out of money in your retirement account. So an annuity can be a good thing. Just know that typically it has higher costs, higher management fees in an annuity. So it's not the right option for everyone, but if you're really nervous about running out of money, consider an annuity. It's an option. Now let's go to this question that Angela brought up, the future of Social Security. This is the year to remember, 2035, okay? 2035 is the year that Social Security hits a cliff. And I use that as a scare tactic in the first session. It's not going to go away in 2035. It's going to be underfunded. That means statisticians put it about 75% funded. That means there's still money there. It's just not enough, okay? So there are proposals right now on the table. If an administration could get its act together, we could figure this out. We still have time. There's still time to figure this out for Social Security. In theory, they could figure this out and we would not be impacted that much. For those of you who have to consider retirement years after 2035. Some of the current proposals, of course, raise taxes. You could raise Social Security taxes. That could help, or you could actually increase the amount of money out there in the world that's subject to Social Security tax. Those are some proposals out there. So, you may have higher taxes coming when it comes to this issue. Another idea is that the full retirement age be raised. This one seems to be the most popular right now based on my reading because it's going to impact people less negatively. So right now, the age is, or the year is 1960. If you're born after 1960, you can retire at 67. If you're born before 1960, you can get full retirement benefits at 65. So I'm got my retirement year is like 2054, and I'm thinking that at that point I probably need to be planning to work full time until I'm about 69. So if you're younger, if you're in your 30s, maybe in your 40s, plan for that. Plan to maybe have to work until a later time and not be drawing Social Security as early. And then there's a last proposal out there to cut benefits. It doesn't seem to be very popular right now with the environment that we're in. Does this help you break down the idea of planning retirement a little bit? Is this helpful? There are some additional considerations, okay? Figuring out where you want to put your money. You want to be careful about picking stocks. This is what I did in college. I picked stocks. It's basically going to Las Vegas and, throwing your money on the craps table. That's really what it is. You can do as much research as you want, but really that ticker is going to go up or it's going to go down, and you really don't know what's going to happen. It's a dangerous way to live because in the publicly traded world, if a company goes bankrupt, what happens to its stock price? It plummets all the way down to nothing. Yes. So if you are picking stocks and the next day your company goes bankrupt, you lost it all. The way to avoid that is to go into mutual funds or exchange-traded funds. What these are, they're managed by a brokerage. They're pretty easy to get into. If you work with a retirement counselor, or if you just go through Charles Schwab, or I use TD Ameritrade for some of my personal investments. And you look through, they'll have some funds. There are some exchange-traded funds. This is basically a big pool of money that takes an average return. So there is no bankruptcy risk. The fund will not go bankrupt. It cannot, because it's taken 200, 300, 400 companies, and it's spreading the money all over the place, and you get an average return. It's much more secure. This is where most people are going to put their retirement nest egg, is in the idea of a mutual fund or an exchange-traded fund. In case you're interested, the S&P 500 averages about 10% return every year. That's the average return. Doesn't mean it does that every year. That's the average over the course of the existence of the S&P 500 is 10%. There are some things to consider with inflation and all that. In the short term, the S&P could plummet 20% next year. You don't know. If you've got time, your best bet. Warren Buffett, the billionaire, he says, if I could go over and plan my retirement, what I would do is I would park my money in an S&P 500 fund and just leave it. This is one of the richest guys in the world, one of the biggest experts in investing, and he says, just park it in there. Don't try to outsmart yourself. Just park it in there in a fund that's going to average what the market is doing. And that way, your biggest risk is the U.S. economy. If the U.S. economy goes bankrupt in doesn't exist. You're going to lose your money, but you'll have bigger problems anyway, okay? And it won't matter. So that's for what it's worth. That's typically, you don't have to overthink it. Don't try to go find the hottest stock out there for your retirement. Pick a fund that's conservative, that will get you that gives you a good history of what it's done in the past. You can get an idea of what it will do in the future, and that's where you need to put your money. If you really need to sit down and talk with a counselor, get a financial counselor, a financial advisor, and talk with them. They'll really help you. There will be some fees associated with that, but it's going to be well worth it if they get your retirement into a good situation for you, okay? And in case you're interested as we wrap up, I really like to try and make money in the stock market. It's a flaw. It's probably a sin problem, okay? So I devised this situation where I would have some money put into a fund, and that's kind of where I'd put some money, and I just put it in the fund. And then I would have this other portfolio, that I would try to get rich in. Does anyone want to take a guess at which one's doing better? Yeah, the one in the fund that I just let sit there and I don't actively manage is doing better. It's doing way better. It's doing miles better. In fact, I'm mad that I even tried to do it on my own because it's just so hard. No, I believe in my heart. My portfolio is going to come back around. I believe that. It will. I think the investments I chose will come back. I'm holding on to that. And when they do, it's going to be glorious. But now is not that day. If you have a retirement account, 2017 was a great year for pretty much all investments. The S&P's up, like 20% this year. 2017 was a good year.